What was the best MMO of 2014? Hey everybody, it's Ziz here, and this is the first video of 2015, and I thought the best way to start the year off is talk about what happened last year. We're going to talk about the best MMO of 2014. Now, I didn't play every MMO, and there's no way I could review games I didn't play, so I'm just going to talk about the MMOs I did play. That's the Elder Scrolls Online, WildStar, ArcheAge, and the new Warlords of Draenor World of Warcraft game. And I'm going to compare all the good things and bad things about them and what I think the best game MMO of 2014 was that came out. Now there's lots of MMOs that have been out, but I'm specifically going to talk about the new ones that came out that I played. First MMO I played in 2014 was the Elder Scrolls Online. I've been playing it through alpha and beta. When the game came out in April, I was already on board, and there were a few things that I really liked about the game. The first thing was the class and the skill system. You can use any class with any armor and weapons you want, which is really nice and really fun. I love that. You can play any class and you're not stuck and nailed down to this one specific play style or specific items. You can do whatever you want, which is a lot of freedom. A lot of games you play, they kind of limit what you can do, and that feels really constrictive after a little while. Being able to play anything and pick anything is really awesome, and so I love that part about ESO. The number two thing I loved about it was Cyrodiil, the open world PvP keep siege sort of mechanic. It is my favorite thing ever. I come from Dark Age of Camelot, and that's all I did in that game, and that's my favorite thing in PvP, is to have those keep sieges and this open sort of warfare. And Cyrodiil and ESO has that really well. I think it's the best game that is out right now if you want that sort of combat. I think it's better than Guild Wars 2 and other games that have it. And so I really love that, and I was really enjoying the game. The problem is, when the game came out, it had tons of bugs everywhere. There were quests you couldn't complete. There was your main storyline you couldn't get through. You couldn't group with people. There were dungeons that just stopped in the middle of it, and you couldn't. There were so many bugs. People had a ton of problems, and that was really unfortunate, and really was a downer on the game when you basically couldn't play it. On top of that, another thing I didn't like was how unresponsive it was. Now, what I'm talking about unresponsive is when you press a button and it doesn't happen. Like, you want to open a door and you press it and nothing happens, you press it, and that happens in combat, when you're on a mount, when you're opening a door, all over the place, and it's just really frustrating when it doesn't do what you want it to do. And so even though it had these things I really enjoyed, like the skill system and Cyrodiil, I just couldn't get past it, which unfortunately led to me leaving the game shortly after its release. I left that game and went to WildStar. Now, I had not been following WildStar really up until the game came out. Just before it came out, I kind of found it and I was like, wow, this looks pretty interesting. I really like a couple of things in WildStar. First is the combat system. Now, it's not a tab target system where you press a button and it always hits your target. You actually have to aim your abilities, and there's AoEs and things, which is really exciting. When you're in combat, you are totally engrossed in what you're doing. Also, on top of that, everything shows you on the ground, this sort of AoE outline of what's happening. Now, it kind of makes it look crazy and cluttered on the screen, but it's really fun when you can see not only where your abilities are going, but you see all the enemies' abilities as well. Usually in games, you're running around trying not to get hit, but you don't really see it. You know, you're kind of missing out on that level of information. And in WildStar, you see, oh, this giant hit is coming in, so you got to dodge out of the way, and then you have to use a skill shot to hit this person over here, and then there's a crazy looking AoE that spins around you that you're running through it. The fights are really fun in PvP and also in dungeons and PvE. They are actually my favorite dungeons that I've played in an MMO. Now, sure, there's lots of dungeons, there's WoW raids and all these other things that are good, but when you're fighting a boss in WildStar, it was actually really awesome. On top of that, the game world itself is really fun. It has a ton of character and entertainment, and when you're playing, it's like you're almost playing in the middle of like a cartoon, like you're a character in this world, and it does that really well. Instead of feeling like you're just killing 10 rats or whatever, sure, it has those quests, but the storyline's really good and engrossing you. It's a lot of fun. But the problems with it, and which is kind of opposite of what I just said, is the game didn't have any hook for me. Even though it was entertaining and fun and I really enjoyed the combat, for some reason I never felt like I wanted to keep coming back to play the game. In fact, I only got to about level 40. I didn't even get to endgame in the super hard raids, and I was already kind of felt like, I don't know, maybe it's because it was so similar to other MMOs, but there was just, it had no hook that made me want to keep playing and keep going. On top of that, there was very limited PvP. Now what I mean is, when you queue for PvP in the early levels, there's only a couple of different battlegrounds you can go to. One is like a capture the flag sort of scenario, and the other one is control points. Now, when you only have two options for PvP, they can get old pretty quickly when you've done them 40, 50, 60, 100 times each. And then it's like, well, I'm kind of bored of this. Now, there are other forms of PvP, but when they're later on in the game and you don't even get to experience them, it kind of is a little bit of a downer. And so I really loved WildStar, and honestly, I think it's maybe the biggest unfortunate casualty in MMO, because right now it's not doing well. I did end up leaving that game and I went to ArcheAge. Now, ArcheAge is a game that has been out for years over in the East. I think in like Korea, China, Japan. So it's been out for a long time and people have been playing it. And the benefit to that is, hey, this game has been out to be super polished, and they brought it over to the West and they localized it so it has English subtitles and English, all this stuff. So we finally get to play it. There's a couple of things in ArcheAge that I was really looking forward to. First is the open PvP. Now, we just talked about in WildStar how I was tired of these two battlegrounds, and in ArcheAge it has open PvP. You can attack anybody in the world, basically almost anywhere you want. You can kill people, you can take their trade packs, you can fight them on boats and ships, and like lots of PvP and a lot of fun, right, all over the place. That would be really, really exciting. On top of that is the player-run economy. Now, the difference here is that when you have a player-run economy, everything is really meaningful. Those items that you normally just sell and get some gold, they're really worth it. Going out and mining now, you can sell it, and that money is really valuable because now you need to get the items that craft it. It's just way better than a game where, drops are so prevalent and stuff. When everything is created, it really creates this intense sort of scenario and economy, which is a lot of fun. You can play the marketplace and you can buy stuff off the auction house and sell it for more, and it kind of has this whole other game within the game. Is like the economy game, which is actually really fun to be a part of that because it's so meaningful. The problem is, and some things I didn't like about ArcheAge, is I got to max level. I got to level 50 in like the first week and a half. So I was max level really, really quickly. And you kind of quickly realize when you're trying to do PvP and 1v1 arenas and stuff that there's kind of no skill involved. And what I mean by that is the gear that you have and the skills that you've picked, your class, trumps basically anything that you do on the keyboard or the skill that you have. For example, let's say you're playing this certain class over here and someone else has a class that counters you. Maybe they have a spell like that puts you up in a bubble, right? If you don't have a specific counter to that bubble spell, you're basically dead. They can shoot you with a meteor and lightning bolt you, and you can die before you ever had a chance because you didn't have the one skill to counter the bubble. Well, if you change your class so now you can counter the bubble people, maybe now you don't have a good counter to charm or a sleep or whatever. So there's always specific counters, which sounds kind of good in theory. You want classes to counter each other. The problem is it's such a hard counter that you're playing and it's like, why did you lose? Not because they played better than you, but because they had this one skill that just killed you and you had no answer for it, which I really didn't like that. And on top of that, if you have someone who has better than gear than you, it is completely ridiculous. They have a weapon that does 4 times as much damage than you. Obviously you're not going to win, and this turns into either grind to win or pay to win. Now, I'm not saying that every game should be casual friendly, but there's such a huge difference. If you have someone that plays just a couple hours a day, someone who plays 15 hours a day, and someone who spends thousands of dollars in the game, there's such a huge difference there, you might as well just quit unless you're at the top tier. So those are a couple problems with ArcheAge that I jumped into that I really didn't like and made me stop playing the game. This led us to our number 4 MMO of the year, and that was Warlords of Draenor, the new World of Warcraft expansion. Now, I had played WoW for a few years, but it's been a while since I had played. But Warlords of Draenor had some really awesome features that I was super excited to play. First, they were upgrading the graphics and all the skills. And so basically, WoW has never looked better. Now, sure, it's still cartoony a little bit, but it looks really, really good, and it doesn't affect my gameplay at all. I don't feel like I'm playing an old game anymore. On top of that, they got rid of a bunch of the skills. Now, I know some people didn't like that because they felt like it lowered the gameplay, but honestly, I didn't like looking at a thing with 40 different hotkeys where you're tracking 20 different cooldowns. I like actually looking in the game and playing the game and then not having 3 or 4 of the same skill that do all the same thing. I really enjoyed that. They got rid of a bunch of the skills, they did a stat squish, they updated stuff, so I really liked the way the game felt and looked and played. On top of that, they added garrisons. Now, garrisons are a super cool idea. You start with this small little sort of town and you get to build it up over time. You get to pick what kind of buildings you want in there. So I have a blacksmith and I have a place for storage for my bank and stuff. I have an auction guy, I have a mine, and like all this stuff that you get to do. And on top of that, you have followers that you get to recruit followers and send them out to go do quests, and they get you gold and experience, and they get you, items and all these sorts of things. And it's really, really fun, and it's really cool. I was super invested in it when it first came out, and you can customize it however you like. So that's another really awesome thing. And the third super cool thing was that if you got Warlords of Draenor, it gave you a free level 90, right? I hate questing, I hate leveling up. A free level 90, boom, so you're ready for Warlords of Draenor. So that sucked me in, and it was super awesome. The problem was, and the reason I'm no longer playing it right now, is because after a little while, it feels like the same thing. Now, sure, they got rid of some skills and it looks a little bit better, but really, basically, it's the same game, which isn't a problem. There's millions and millions of people that play it and love it. But if you got tired of WoW because you were tired of the same old thing, then you would probably be tired of the way it is currently. Garrisons, although cool in features and ideas, really is just a quest hub for dailies. Every day you gotta log in and you need to do a bunch of dailies, which kind of lost their luster and they're not super interesting anymore. On top of that, the dungeons, while pretty cool and interesting, they're actually a little too easy, and so they're kind of boring. Basically, every dungeon that I've been in, and then now the raids, you just hop in a group, you don't have to talk to anybody or do anything. The mechanics are very simple. You just zerg through and kill everything, and I don't know if I've hardly died once. It's kind of boring. Now, I know you can get in a guild and do the harder versions of raids, but really, it's not really challenging, and at the end of the day, I just had no reason. I didn't feel like logging in anymore. So, what is the best MMO of 2014? Well, let's recap. I think ESO has the best skill system and PvP in Cyrodiil. WildStar is really entertaining and has great combat. ArcheAge has amazing economy and is pretty hardcore, and I think World of Warcraft is the best it's been in years. But when you come down to it, I think the best MMO of 2014 is the Elder Scrolls Online. That's right, I think it's better than World of Warcraft, Warlords of Draenor, WildStar, ArcheAge, or any other MMO that's out there right now. Now, why do I say that? It all comes down to this. ESO is the game that I keep coming back to. I don't know what it is about the game. Maybe it's the realistic graphics, maybe it's the skill system, maybe it's Cyrodiil and the PvP. I don't know what it is, but I cannot get away from ESO. I love playing it, I love streaming it, I love making game videos for it, and the future looks really good for ESO. The game is more responsive and better combat and flow than it has been since it's been released, and patch 1.6 is coming out very, very soon, which is going to add a ton of cool features like the champion system and the justice system, and they're redoing a bunch of skills and the way stats work. So a lot of good stuff is coming there. In the future, we're going to see the Imperial City come out, which I cannot wait for, and eventually the justice system will allow you to kill other players that are wanted. So when it comes down to it, I think ESO is the best MMO of 2014. But that's just my opinion. Let me know in the comments down below, what do you think the best MMO is this year? And what are you playing and what are you enjoying? As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you out there.